everybody, and welcome to Ball Nation's Power T Talk. I'm Zack, your host. I don't have a co-host today. Daniel will not be joining us. He has family obligations this week. And since he won't be joining us, this is not going to be about Tennessee football. Without him, to be blunt, I just felt like it wouldn't be right as the season ramps up. So it's going to be a solo episode. There is an overall theme that I'm going to talk about today. I think it's a theme that everyone can relate to. But before I get into that, I wanted to talk about David George Gabriel committing to Tennessee, 5-star running back. He's been on Tennessee's radar since he was a freshman at Baylor High School in Chattanooga. One of the best players in the country, arguably the best running back in the country. Great job by the staff, great job by the boosters, great job by Adidas to get him. I think he's a true impact player. I've seen the highlights. I'm not a film guru, especially when it comes to high school football players, but it feels like this was a great get for Tennessee. Anytime Ohio State wants a running back, you have to feel like that's going to be a good running back. They have such a great history with that position. So I'm really happy Tennessee was able to get him. I think it's going to really spur some recruiting momentum for the program, lead to a top 10 class. And you would like to think with him, Faison, Tristan Keys next year, that could be one of the most dynamic offenses in the entire country. And having potential first-round talents like that, those positions, something Tennessee's never really had before, could really open up the offense. So great job by the coaching staff. I wanted to shout that out real quick. It's been a big topic. And, since Daniel's not here, I can say that. Ohio State, you've got plenty of other players. You don't have to be so sour about this one. I'm sure you can find another 5-star running back somewhere lying around. So today, I want to talk about something I think everyone thinks about if you're a true college football fan. It's something we discussed before, me and Daniel have, kind of at the end of episodes. We've kind of even hyped up this episode about building a college football world that we find to be the best fit. If you're a psycho like me, maybe you have trouble sleeping, you come up with ideas, or maybe you come up with your perfect college football world in dynasty mode on your Xbox or PlayStation, or maybe you're just talking with your buddies about it on crisp Saturday in the fall. But everyone, I think, would agree that college football has never been perfect. From the beginning of the 20th century to now, the sport of college football has never made everyone happy. We had regional biases, uneven conferences. We decided national championships by journalists for well over 6-7 decades. Sports information directors and head coaches decided national championships. We had, in the 80s, all of the corruption with paying players underneath the table. It's never been perfect. It's never going to be perfect. Everybody has their own idea of what college football should look like. You could be like my grandfather was and think, I don't even know if kids deserve scholarships. You just play for the love of the game. You could be the biggest capitalist and thinks players should be getting $20 million if they deserve it. Everyone has their own opinion. But I think the one thing that we can all agree on is that the gap has never been worse in terms of the structure and the compartmentalization of the sport. And that's a big problem. This is a billion-dollar company. And I know that the NCAA technically isn't a company, but there are billions of dollars that go into college football, from media rights, coaches, players. Everyone has a stake in the game, and there's no structure. There's the conferences and the commissioners who decide what happens, and that's not fair. It's not fair in the sport. And unlike the professional sports scene, where there's a draft, there's a playoff structure, there are divisions and schedules that make sense. There's none of that in college football. We have the ACC having 12 teams play 9 conference games, and 5 teams are playing 8 conference games. The SEC, the Big 12, the ACC required that you play another Power 4 conference team. Big 10 doesn't. The schedule doesn't make sense. The coaches are tired of the schedule. The players don't like how quick the portal is. So to me, we need to come up with a better system. Nobody has every answer, but as someone who's become fascinated with how leagues and conferences work in all facets of sports, right now is the time we need structure and continuing more than ever. So the hypothetical is this. You can either make me the commissioner for a day and my rule is law forever. You say the government is taking proposals on how to fix college football and they're going to take the best one. However hypothetical you want to play it, we're going to try and build a perfect college football world in my eyes. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to talk about NIL. We're going to talk transfer portal, conferences, the schedule, and everything. I'm really excited. This is something I want to do with Daniel. We're actually going to have a follow-up episode. He's going to ask some questions, give his own ideas as like a bonus episode. But I'm going to dive deep, give a lot of details. Some of this might bore you. I apologize about that, but it's something I'm passionate about, something I've thought about, something I've worked hard on to come up with a perfect college football world right after this. So the first thing is you got to come up with NIL, right? How are we going to fix NIL, or how are we going to pay players? And this is probably the easiest thing I would do. And I'm going to keep it simple. I'd pull the media rights. I'd give players and coaches a percentage, then pull it with NIL and set max salaries for programs. You can spend this amount in NIL and with your budget, and everything has to be reported, and you can't go above that. You want to spend 25% of your money on Darian Mensah, so be it. You want to spend 1%, that's fine too. However numbers work out, that's what I would believe would be the best option. And that's probably the easiest thing I can come up with. I don't know what the numbers would be. I don't have all those numbers, but I would just pull the media rights together. And honestly, I think if you did that, I think college football would make even more money. I think with how the structure currently works, it's not effective. I think conferences are losing money. So they're thinking short term, not long term. So I would just pull them together. If you want to pull them with the top 70 programs in Division One, and then pull the bottom 70, however you want to do it, I would pull it. I'd play players and coaches a percentage, have NIL max sets, and I would go from there. All right. The next thing, transfer portal. I don't think there will ever be a perfect answer. I think the old answer of you had to sit out of here if you transfer unless you graduate, I think that sucks. I don't think that's fair. Honestly, I think it's anti-American. You know, my thesis has always been if you're a successful or you're an excellent chemist and you want to go transfer to a better chemistry school, you know, the next year and you get approved, you don't have to sit out chemistry for a year. And I know football is not chemistry. I understand that, but it never made sense to me. We force kids to sit out. But at the same time, I don't like that you can play for 4 teams in 4 years. I think that isn't good for the sport. So my policy or my proposal, I would say you could have one free transfer anytime before you graduate. No penalty. You want to transfer after your freshman year, you can do that. If you want to transfer after your sophomore year, that's fine too. And I also think if you have a degree in hand, you can be allowed to transfer with no penalty. I think once you graduate, I think you deserve to have another place and go get a master's. I like the 5x5 rule. I think we should keep it. I'm good with 5x5. I would just say 3 FBS schools maximum. That means you'd have to stay at one spot at least 2 years minimum. I think that would be a good answer. Also, if you want to go to this lower division, D2 or FCS1, whatever you want to call it, I'm good with no restrictions. I think if you transfer from Akron, you want to go play at Jackson State, there shouldn't be any restrictions there. If your head coach leaves, this is the hard one, because let's say you're a freshman in Sam Houston State, you go play for Texas Tech as a sophomore, and Joey McGuire takes the Dallas Cowboys head coaching job. I don't think it's fair that you aren't allowed to transfer for another 2 years until you graduate. So for me, if your head coach leaves, you're allowed to transfer a second time before you graduate, but then you forfeit your graduate transfer. I think that's fair. So you can transfer twice, essentially, and you can play for 3 teams max. I think that's the best option. And again, I don't think there's a perfect answer. I just don't like seeing sports reference pages with 4 schools in 4 years. I don't think that's good for the sport. I don't think it's good for the kids. And something John Calipari has mentioned is if you're transferring, you're losing credits. A lot of colleges don't necessarily accept other credits from other schools. Sometimes you got to basically restart. So I think putting that in with the 5x5 is going to be your best option. I don't want to go back to the old way, but I also want to put in some safeguards. I think that's the best way to put it, is there should be some safeguards. And then one other thing I would do, and this will be unpopular, but as someone who's kind of gotten into European soccer with the World Cup, I believe if a group of 7 player transfers to a Power 7 school, I think the Power 7 school should pay a transfer fee, like in European soccer. I don't know what that number would be. I wrote $200K. Maybe that's a little low. Maybe it's a little high. But a key to that is if the Power 7 school won less than 7 games, so 7 games or less, they don't have to pay the transfer fee. That's probably not the greatest idea ever, but then that way you're not punishing a Rutgers who goes 6-6 and doesn't have a ton of money in football. It's like, oh, hey, we want to get this offensive lineman. Oh, we got to pay a $200,000 transfer fee. Well, we can't afford that, or that's not going to work. So to me, if you're a team like Rutgers and go win 6 games, you need to fill a couple holes and you're getting out recruited, this is something that you could take advantage of, is going to get, a good player who's a junior or a sophomore from a lower school. It encourages players to transfer, but it also encourages these schools to actually put an investment in these kids from transferring outside of NIL. So that's what I would do. And I think it would also prevent, potentially like in Ohio State or in Indiana from grabbing 30 kids from these lower schools that are 5th-year players. If you've got to pay $200K for a transfer, then I think that would work. I'm waffling on if the kid graduates, if there should be one. I'm willing to keep that open, but I just think there should be some sort of transfer fee if a group of 7 player transfers to a Power 7 school. The transfer portal window, it's 45 days. Starts on January 15th, closes on March 1st. No spring practices before March 1st. If a player transfers after spring ball, the player must sit out the season unless the head coach is no longer in the program. So if you go to school, like let's take the Mike Price example at Alabama from 20-some years ago, he gets fired in spring ball. If he gets fired, then I think it's okay that you can go transfer and play somewhere else. But if you transfer after spring ball, you got to sit out. And maybe some kids would do that. I don't know, but that's how I would do it. Kind of to go with the transfer portal window is the schedule, right? The schedule's a mess. Everyone hates it. We're playing national championship games during conference championship games in the NFL. There's, these weird days between games and bowl games. It's awkward. And this is like one of my biggest complaints right now. I don't like this structure. So for me, we're going to fix it. We're going to start the season on the 3rd or 4th week in August. That's what we're going to do. And we're going to do a 14-week schedule, and you're going to get 2 bye weeks. So we're going to have a 14-week schedule, and however that works in terms of the calendar in August, whether it's the 3rd or 4th Saturday, you're going to play 12 games. Everyone plays 12 regular season games and 2 bye weeks. For Power 7 teams, you're going to play 9 conference games, and you're going to play 1 other Power 7 school. Yes, Power 7. I will get there in a minute. For group of 7 teams, they're going to play 9 conference games and at least 1 other group of 7 school. And we're not allowing FCS games. I will get there in a second, but for the regular season, you can't play a team in the FCS. I don't like it. I think they're wasted opportunities. I understand those schools get paid. I'll tell you how we're going to fix that. But for me, 12 regular season games, 2 bye weeks, and that's how we're doing it every year. You can play 1 preseason game against an FCS school in your state or within 400 miles of your campus 2 to 3 weeks before the season. So there's your bye games. I hate that we don't have a preseason in college football. I think it's a lost opportunity. I think it's an opportunity for you to lower ticket prices, make it $20 a person, and have kids come to the game on Friday night before school starts and watch college football and fall in love with the traditions of college football. I don't want to see Tennessee play Furman in the regular season. I don't. I think it's pointless. I think it's dumb. I think no one benefits from it. Because we've even seen these FCS teams, sit out their star players because if they get hurt, they're done for the season. So let's make it a preseason game. Let's get all the scholarship kids. I know walk-ons, we don't have those anymore, but use your 105. If you want to take it like the NFL and you just want to play your starters one drive, that's great. Or two drives, whatever. But to me, I want to see these be preseason games. If we want to start a little earlier in the summer, I'm good with that too. I also think I'm good scrimmaging a spring game. Same rules. FCS school in your state or within 400 miles of your campus. If you want to do a spring game or you want to do a spring practice with an FCS school, I think that's a great idea. I think we're wasting these opportunities, especially now that spring games have really died down in importance. So I would do that. I would have a preseason game, FCS school. If you want to do an FCS school in the spring, you can as well. You have to do one of them. You don't have to do both, but you got to do one of them. And I would tell everyone you're lowering ticket prices. Lowering ticket prices, do something after the game for the kids. Let kids fall in love with college football. The conference championship week will be held on Thanksgiving week. I think we're missing a little bit of an opportunity. I know the NFL dominates on Thanksgiving, but I think we are missing out on opportunities outside of that Thursday. A lot of people take a 5-day weekend, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think we have an opportunity to let some of these lower conferences shine. And what I would do is if you're a group of 7 school or a group of 7 conference, I would have the last week of the regular season be a bye week for your entire conference. So let's take the MAC. The MAC, the last week of the regular season, the week before Thanksgiving, all their teams are on a bye. And what I would do is I would have them play on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So that's an 11-day break or so. They have the window that night or that maybe the afternoon. Maybe they share it with like the Mountain West. But that gives them an opportunity to get more eyes on their product on those Wednesday, Thursday, Fridays. Maybe you might not be able to do it on Thursday because the NFL runs all day, but that Wednesday, Friday, I think is a great opportunity for those conferences to get eyes on them. So I would do that. And then the first weekend, December is going to be exclusively for the Army-Navy game, awards, and the Heisman Trophy ceremony. So we're going to have a bye week after Thanksgiving. But I just think having conference title games, and I'm going to have 14 conferences. So we're going to have 14 conference title games. We'll get there. But having games Wednesday, Friday, Saturday for these lower conferences, and even on Sunday, maybe Sunday morning, you're telling me you wouldn't be excited to watch the American Athletic Conference Championship game at like 10 a.m. on a Sunday morning for Thanksgiving weekend? I'd be all in. So that's how I would do it. Next, we're going to fix the playoff and bowl season. I don't know if everyone's going to love this. I have a feeling they won't. But I think if you hear my conferences in the next section, you'll like it more. So I want you to keep an open mind here about how I would do the playoff and the bowl season. Okay. I talked about 14 conferences. I said a Power 7 conference and a group of 7 conferences. We're going to do an 18 playoff. 8 teams. To be eligible for the playoffs, you must win your conference championship game. The biggest complaint I have about college football right now, outside of the conferences, is that there is no specific merit-based system for the playoff. There is technically nothing stopping the committee from taking a 7-5 team and putting them in a 12-team playoff. If a 7-5 team lost, let's say the top 5 teams in the country, the committee could, by their own admission, say, we think since this team lost 5 games by, let's say, 15 points against the top 5 teams in the country, they're one of the 12 best teams. They might not be 1 through 5, but they might be 6. And we're going to put them in. Nothing stops them from doing that. Having a committee for the NCAA tournament or for the NCAA baseball tournament, softball, makes sense. It's a lot of teams. And when you have 330-something teams, it's very difficult to try and get an even merit-based system. So I don't love committee, but I understand it. for a football playoff with 140 teams, the fact this is all committee based and it's, we take the top 5 conference championships and then the other 7, we decide on our own whims, I think is stupid. I think it's terrible. And I think there's too much corruption that can happen. There's too many biases that play a factor. I would have nothing to do with the committee. And I would determine the top 8 by the BCS. If there's any 3-way ties in the conferences, the BCS determines it. Strength of schedule really matters. Point differential is going to matter. Things like that. I would rather do that than what we have now, which I think is stupid. And I think is really, honestly, just reminds me of the polls, of people deciding national championships with the AP poll or the coaches poll. So the BCS system is going to determine the top 8 playoff spots. The quarterfinals, the higher ranked team's going to host on the second weekend in December. So conference championship week is Thanksgiving week. We take a week off for Army, Navy, Heisman ceremony awards. And then Friday night, Saturday, the next week, we're going to have 4 games, quarterfinals, higher ranked team host on the second weekend of December. And the reason we're going to do that is so teams will not be afraid to schedule out of conference, good out of conference games, because strength of schedule is going to matter significantly in the BCS system. I think this is a really good idea. I love home playoff games. It's the only positive I can think of with the 12-team play. I think home playoff games are awesome. I think having one on Friday night and then one at 12, one at 4, one at 8 is really cool on Saturday. And so that's what we're going to do. The following week, semifinals at a neutral site bowl game. Both games played on Saturday, and the 4 bowl games are going to rotate every year to host a playoff semifinal game. It's going to be Fiesta Bowl, Sugar Bowl, Cotton Bowl, and the Orange Bowl. There's your 4. They're going to rotate every other year. The 2 bowls that do not host semifinal games will host the quarterfinal losers where the 4 schools play each other. And the winner of those bowl games receives a $12 million award for players. It's over $114K each with 105 players. And the losers get a $6 million award. I don't know if you're going to be able to prevent opt-outs. Probably not. But at least you're continuing the tradition of the other bowl games. There's going to be 30 non-playoff bowl games for a total of 35. Teams must win at least 6 games. And if you're bowl eligible, you get an additional 15 practices. So basically what it is now. The national title game will be played January 1st. It's going to be the Rose Bowl starting at 5 p.m. every year. The Rose Bowl is going to be the national title game. It's, in my opinion, the best bowl game. I don't like that we keep moving it to quarterfinals and semifinals, whatever. We're just going to make it the national title game, playing it at 5 p.m. January 1st. And now you're done. You're done January 1st. Season's over. Portal starts on the 15th. 45-day portal. Have National Signing Day in February. Unless they're an early enrollee. I'd get rid of the early signing period. That's not going to happen, but I would at least consider it. But now we're done. So you start middle of August, you go to January 1st, and we're good. I think that's the best way to get the schedule done. I don't know how feasible that would be with a 12-team playoff. I don't think it is at all, even if you took out the conference title games. But to me, this would be much better than what we currently have. So some of you are thinking, I don't like that only one team represents a conference. And if you listen to it, you will hear that at least one non-Power 7 conference will get in. I think one should. I know everybody wants to, say 3 SEC teams deserve it or whatnot. But to me, I don't like trying to guess wild cards and who's got the better conference, who deserves that 8th spot. Let's give it to a group of 17, and the other 7 are Power 7s that win the conference title game. That's how I would do it. So now probably people are asking, okay, so Zach, you're going to do conferences. We got to figure out how we're going to do this, right? This is how I would do it. I have 140 FBS teams, no independents. We're getting rid of it. Sorry. That's a 1972 idea. We don't need that anymore. We're going to do 140 FBS teams. If a team drops down from FBS to FCS, then an FCS team can file for promotion, but we're sticking at 140. That's the hard cap. I think 120 is actually the best number, but I don't want to have to worry about cutting 20 programs. So we're just going to do 140. We're going to add 2 more. There's 138 now. We'll add 2 more, 14 conferences, 10 teams per conference. I will say this. We're going to have soft relegation. If a group of 17 does not make a bowl in a 10-year span, relegation can be voted upon by the members of that conference. So Akron, Kent State, if you don't make a bowl in 10 years, the conference can vote you out and replace you. I don't think that would happen, but at least it's in there. I thought about a Power 17. I think it's really hard to switch those, but we know teams and programs ebb and flow. My thinking was if a Power 17 does not make a bowl in a 10-year span, a swap between conferences can occur, but it has to be agreed on by basically all the conference members in both conferences. So if the Big Ten wants to swap out Purdue because they haven't won 3 games in a season in 10 years, and Ball State's become the best group of 7 program in the Midwest, to me, that has to be agreed on by both conference commissioners or taken a vote or majority, something of that nature, and then approved by the NCAA commissioner. Also, you can't swap like Purdue for Boise State. And there's no Power 7 swapping. That's just, you're opening yourself up for Oregon to go back in the Big Ten. We're not doing that. No conference can have more than 10 teams. It's 10. That's the max. But overall, I don't want any program switching conferences. No Power 17 can switch conferences between another Power 17, period. Each conference will have a conference championship game at a neutral site. For the Power 7, I'm good with home conference style games for Group of 7 if they want to do that. That's up to them. The winner of the big Power 7 conference is eligible to compete in the playoffs. It's still going to be top 8 based off BCS, just in case we get, for some reason, 9-14 winning the conference. But I'd imagine the Power 7 will get every year. So here's going to be your Power 7 conferences. It's going to be the ACC, the Big Ten. The Big 12 was going to be renamed the Central 10 Conference or the CEN 10 Conference. We're going to have the Eastern Athletic Association, the EAA, the Pac-10, the SEC, and we're having the Southwest Conference. We are putting the Southwest Conference back. The EAA is going to essentially be the Big East, but the Big East has its own identity now with basketball. I didn't want to just rename it the Big East. So I came up with the Eastern Athletic Association. Is that going to work? I don't know. If you have a better name, please let me know. I don't love it. I'm not attached to it. But think of that as the Big East. And then we have the Pac-10, ACC, Big Ten, SEC. And the Big 12 is going to keep its history. It's just going to be renamed the CEN 10 Conference because I think it's really dumb to have 18 teams and be called the Big 10, or 16 teams be called the Big 12, or have 10 teams be called the Big 12. I think it's dumb. So we renamed it. This one, if you want to follow along with me, you can. I'm going to at least give the Power 7 conferences here in a minute. I'll tell you what the Group of 7 is going to be. I'm not going to go team by team with the Group of 7. I can post a link if you guys want. I have a spreadsheet, but I don't think you guys want to hear me name 140 teams. So the Group of 7 will be as follows. It's going to be the AAC, Conference USA, the FCL, which is the Freedom Collegiate League, the MAC, the Mountain West Conference, the Sun Belt, and then we're going to reinstate the WAC, which did go down to FCS, has now been disbanded or basically merged into the UAC, the United Athletic Conference. We're going to take the WAC history and WAC name and reinstall it. This is really tough. Because if you take the 67 Power 4 teams right now and Notre Dame, you get 68. So you get 2 teams that you can play around with. But I think Washington State and Oregon State got screwed. I think what happened to them sucks. I don't like it. And me personally, I think they are a power team or a power 7 team in this case. So I reinstated them. I made one slight change. I'll tell you all in a little bit. But my goal for conferences with no independence is regionality, tradition, rivalries, and honestly, balance. Because if we're going to do this, where we're going to have an 18 playoff and you have to win your conference, we need as much balance as possible in these conferences. You're not going to get perfectly balanced as all things should be. Okay? That's not going to happen. But I do believe it is possible to get as close as you can and make it make sense. And I think people will like it, but that's how we're going to do this here. One more thing. Everyone plays each other in conference. I stole this idea from Josh Pate. He did his own conferences 4 or 5 years ago, kind of updates it every year. And he said every team should play in conference, every other team. And I agree. I think it was kind of dumb when they had 10 teams in the SEC and you played 7. That didn't make a lot of sense back then either. So I think what's going to help is you're going to play everyone in your conference. So you don't have weird matchups or you don't have weird situations like you used to where one team went 11-1 in the division along with another team, but this team got left out because of some sort of ranking. You know, I'm thinking of the BCS in 2008 with Oklahoma and Texas Tech. That's going to help alleviate some of this. And also, if you lose one conference game, you can get a rematch in the conference championship. I want to protect the sanctity of college football's regular season, which I think we are just slipping away what has made the sport so great. But I don't like one loss eliminates you from the national title. I don't like that. Especially as football, the talent pool has grown so much in the last 30 years. Something about that rubs me the wrong way. I don't like that Auburn didn't get a chance in 2004. Florida State didn't get a chance in 2023. So to me, if you lose one game in conference, you get a chance at a rematch in conference title game at a neutral site. That's how you answer it on the field. So that's what we're going to do. So you play 9 conference games, then there's a conference title game. Let's start with the Power 7 conferences now. We're going to start with the Atlantic Coast Conference, the ACC. All these are in alphabetical order. It's going to be Clemson, Duke, Florida State, Maryland, Miami, North Carolina, NC State, South Carolina, Virginia, Wake Forest. South Carolina and Georgia Tech are going to switch, and that's just me personally. That's just me. That's a personal thing. Probably would be South Carolina, the SEC, Georgia Tech, and the ACC, but I just switched it for my own reasons. Part of it being the ACC originally started with 8, sans Miami and Florida State. The 8 original ACC teams are in this conference. Add Florida State, Miami to the better programs we have. That's pretty balanced. It regionally makes sense. There's tradition, there's history. If you want to put Virginia Tech instead of Maryland in, I'm not going to cause too much of a scene, but this is how I think it should be in the ACC. And I think that's pretty balanced. We need Florida State to be good. We need Clemson to bounce back a little bit. We need Miami to keep going. Maybe South Carolina being out of the SEC might actually help their football program, but I think that's a pretty good conference. I think it'd be a fun conference. So that's what I'm going with there. Next, the Big Ten Conference. They would be the biggest losers out of this, but I don't care. Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, Michigan State, Minnesota, Northwestern, Ohio State, Purdue, Wisconsin. That's the original Big Ten that was for half a century. That's what we're going back. So no Penn State, no Oregon, no Washington, none of the goofiness. Notre Dame's not in here. I'll get to them in a minute. But that is how we're going to do it. We're going to do the original Big Ten. And I think it's a really good conference. I think it'd be fun. I miss the Big Ten having an identity. When I grew up, the Big Ten was Midwest, football, tough football, run the ball, 4-3 defense. Maybe it goes back to this if you do this conference. Big Ten doesn't have an identity now. It's just big schools that make lots of money, get great players, which is fine. But let's get back to the original Big Ten. Next, the Central 10 Conference, formerly known as the Big 12, or you can call it the Cen 10 Conference. I think that's fun. I think that fits. It's really just recreating the Big 8, but adding 2 teams. So I'll go over BYU, Colorado, Iowa State, Kansas State, Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma State, and Utah. So I added BYU and Utah along with the original Big 8 that it was for half a century as well. Add those 2 schools, BYU, Utah, have earned, in my opinion, being a part of the Power 7 conferences. It regionally makes sense. Weather-wise makes sense. So that's going to be the Cen 10 Conference. I think that would be really fun. I think it's strong. You have Oklahoma in there. BYU and Utah have been great. We've seen Kansas State have success. Missouri's been pretty solid the last 25 years or so. The Big 8 used to be Oklahoma, Nebraska, and the rest was garbage. I think we've moved past that. And I think Nebraska being in the Cen 10 Conference will help them as well. So that's what I have. Next, it's going to be the Eastern Athletic Association, or the EAA. There's going to be a little bit of a theme. It's going to be Boston College, Cincinnati, Louisville, Notre Dame, Penn State, Pittsburgh, Rutgers, Syracuse, Virginia Tech, and West Virginia. So all these schools have something in common. They all were members of the Big East except Penn State. They also all were independents, pretty heavy independents for a long time, for the early 90s. So if you want to call it the Big East, that's fine. I'm calling it the EAA. I don't love the name. Again, send me recommendations. This puts Notre Dame in a conference. This helps by putting Notre Dame and Penn State in this conference. This helps balance it out. I think if you put Notre Dame in the Big Ten, or if you kept Penn State in the Big Ten, this conference does not work. It would clearly be the weakest to me of the conferences. I think if you put Notre Dame and Penn State in these conferences, then you are going to increase the profits for it. You're going to increase TV revenue. You're going to increase the prestige of the conference. And that will help the other teams. And there's great rivalries in here. Cincinnati, Louisville's a great rivalry. Boston College, Syracuse. We're going to have Penn State and Pitt play every year. We're going to have Pitt and West Virginia be a conference game like it should. Virginia Tech, West Virginia was a great conference, or a great rivalry for a long time. So if you want to switch Virginia Tech and Maryland, I would not complain, but this is how I would do it. Let's reestablish some Northeast football here. Next, the Pac-10 conference. It's going to be the Pac-10, not the Pac-12 or whatever it is now. I think it's still the Pac-12, even though it's got 9 teams. And this is pretty easy. Arizona, Arizona State, Cal, Oregon, Oregon State, Stanford, UCLA, USC, Washington, Washington State. Pretty easy. Pac-10 was like this for about 30 years. The Arizona schools joined, I think, in the 70s. So we're just going to have the Pac-10 conference as it should be, and that's going to work. And Larry Scott, you will not be the commissioner of the Pac-10 conference. Next is the SEC. This one's going to have the most controversial decision. The next 2 conferences, the SEC and the Southwest. I'll explain why I did it this way. So I'm going to give the SEC Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, Georgia Tech, Kentucky, Mississippi, Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Vanderbilt. LSU's not in there. I will explain in just a few minutes. Georgia Tech's in there over South Carolina. I told you I just want Georgia Tech, who's an original founding member of the SEC, back in the SEC. It makes a little more sense regionally. South Carolina goes back to the ACC, where they were a founding member, so I just like that. I like Georgia Tech being a conference game. I think Georgia Tech-Alabama rivalry was very popular in the 50s and 60s. It'll be fun to reinvent that, but this is a big loss for the SEC, especially if you take out LSU. And I think that's going to be my most controversial opinion. Again, I'll tell you why I did that, but I still think this is a really good conference, right? You got Georgia, you got Alabama, you got Florida, you got Tennessee. You've got Georgia Tech in there. Auburn, if they get their things right, they can be a great football team. I like this conference. I think this would be fun. You reestablish the Tennessee-Auburn rivalry. Tennessee can play Florida, Georgia every year. Tennessee could play Georgia Tech every year. I think this would be a lot of fun. I think it's pretty balanced as well. And then last is the Southwest Conference. It's going to be Arkansas, Baylor, Houston, LSU, Rice, SMU, TCU, Texas, Texas A&M, and Texas Tech. Rice is taking the spot of Central Florida. Would that happen? No. Does Rice deserve it? Probably not. They were original member of the Southwest Conference. If you want to put Tulane in there, if you want to put UTEP or UTSA in there, who may have bigger enrollments than Rice, I'm fine with that. I went with the tradition. And I'm willing to give Rice a few years to see if they could do it. Probably not, but that's what I went with. So the Southwest Conference has had 8 members, and they added Houston in the late 70s, the original 9 members before it disbanded. I added LSU to the Southwest Conference for 3 reasons. 1, LSU's maybe the biggest non-Notre Dame national brand, in my opinion, over the last 15, 20 years. Part of the reason Southwest Conference didn't survive wasn't just because of all the scandals that happened in the 80s. They did not have a big enough footprint. Adding the state of Louisiana and that brand would give them enough of a footprint. It would bring balance as well. Arkansas and LSU would bring balance to that conference. I think for LSU as well, it regionally makes sense. If you look at the map, it kind of is interesting that LSU and Tulane were in the SEC. They were actually kind of separated. LSU is right next to Texas, and they're pretty close to Arkansas. I don't think this would ever happen. This is my hypothetical, and there are probably some people who would, make it different, put LSU in the SEC, and there. I've come up with other ways to keep LSU in the SEC, but for my perfect college football world, I think LSU in the Southwest Conference would be a ton of fun. I think playing Texas and Texas A&M every year, playing Houston would be so much fun. And by the way, we're having this be throughout college sports. Same for baseball, basketball, softball. I don't want to get into hockey and stuff like that, but for the 5 major sports, this is going to be how the conferences work. And then again, we have the group of 7 conferences. They're all regional. I'm not going to list everyone by name, but it's very regionally done, trying to keep it as close as possible. I will say I added Illinois State to the MAC, the Mid-American Conference, so from FCS to FBS, and then I added Rhode Island to the Freedom Collegiate League, which is in the Northeast. It's got like Buffalo, Delaware, Navy, Army, UConn. That's where those schools are. So, and the WAC is going to be a lot of the Texas schools, and it's going to be like the Air Force, Colorado State. With the Power 7 conferences, again, you can play around with it a little bit. Kicking out Central Florida kind of sucked. It was that or Rutgers. I think Vanderbilt and Northwestern have done enough to keep a spot. I thought about kicking out Vanderbilt, keeping LSU in the SEC, or keeping Penn State in the Big Ten, kicking out Northwestern. UCF is technically, like, other than SMU, the last school. They don't have a ton of tradition, so I put them in the group of 7. That was the biggest decision I made, other than LSU being moved to the Southwest Conference. So that's my perfect college football world. We have structure. We have things that make sense. The conferences are aligned. The schedule is same for everyone. It's going to be the same every year. To me, I don't think every answer I have here is perfect, but this is how I would do it. I think fixing the conferences would solve a lot of these problems. I think if you implemented like a 10-team rule or a 12-team rule, even 14, you would fix a lot of the problems that are in college football right now. And that would be my first big thing I would do before anything else, if I actually did get to run college football. But I think this makes a ton more sense, a lot more sense than what we currently have. Is it possible? Probably not. Government keeps getting involved, though, so I don't know. Maybe we will have something like this one day, but this is how I would do it. This is how I would come up with these conferences. I think it would make college football what it used to be, which is, at least for me, the best time of year. College football was my favorite. It's gone away from that. And some of that maybe is Tennessee not being as dominant as they used to be, but I think a lot of it is the lack of structure, the politics that are in playing college football, and I think this would take a lot of it out. I appreciate you guys listening. I know hearing the same person talk for 40 plus minutes is not the easiest thing to do. Hopefully I break it up enough for you and you enjoyed the topic. If you have thoughts, please let me know. I think this is going to be a good episode. I think this will get some discussion going, and Daniel's going to come on next week, and he's going to listen to this and have some questions for me, maybe critique some of my ideas. So I appreciate you guys listening. We'll be back on regular schedule next week. We'll talk Jim Knowles' defense. We're doing a deep dive. I've already watched film, gathered notes, just got to organize it. But we're going to talk about Jim Knowles' defense. We'll go a little bit more into DGG's recruitment, and we'll talk a little college football as well. Some SEC Media Day stuff that was kind of fun this week. So thank you guys for listening. And as always, go Vols.